From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon and welcome to your 12 o'clock news update. I'm Nathan Maley and here's what's going on. RCMP in Prince George has said a 12-year-old boy has killed himself after being targeted in an online sextortion scheme. Beth Layton of the Canadian Press has more. The provincial government is set to appear in court today for a class action lawsuit against dozens of healthcare and pharmaceutical companies over the cost of the opioid crisis. The hearing is expected to last about 4 weeks, and a civil trial would then need to be held to determine if the companies are liable. The hearing is continuing even though the Supreme Court of Canada ruled earlier this month that it would hear a constitutional challenge arguing BC's law is an overreach. This battle began in 2018 after the province passed the Opioid Damages and Healthcare Costs Recovery Act. The recall for 2 cantaloupe brands continues as cases of salmonella grow across the country. Our reporter Abby Francis has the story. Why can't I shit?
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
From the broadcast center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon and welcome to your 12 o'clock news update. I'm Nathan Maley and here's what's going on. RCMP in Prince George has said a 12-year-old boy has killed himself after being targeted in an online sextortion scheme. Beth Layton of the Canadian Press has more.
Mounties say the unnamed youth was at home when he shot himself rather than endure the ongoing sextortion demands. Few details are available, but police say the death happened on October 12th. An RCMP statement urges parents to be honest with children about the dangers of online activity, especially with people they don't know. The statement reports 62 cases of online sextortion in Prince George alone this year, up from 56 last year. Beth Layton, The Canadian Press.
The provincial government is set to appear in court today for a class action lawsuit against dozens of healthcare and pharmaceutical companies over the cost of the opioid crisis. The hearing is expected to last about 4 weeks, and a civil trial would then need to be held to determine if the companies are liable. The hearing is continuing even though the Supreme Court of Canada ruled earlier this month that it would hear a constitutional challenge arguing BC's laws in overreach. This battle began in 2018 after the province passed the Opioid Damages and Healthcare Costs Recovery Act. The recall for 2 cantaloupe brands continues as cases of salmonella grow across the country. Our reporter Abby Francis has the story.
According to the Public Health Authority of Canada, there are 63 confirmed salmonella cases by the laboratory. 12 of these cases are located in British Columbia. This comes after the federal agency issued a recall warning for the Melkita and Rudy brand cantaloupes in the country. These warnings have been in place since October 10th. Some of the symptoms the site lists include fever, chills, nausea, and vomiting. If you are experiencing any of these symptoms, the health authority says to contact your healthcare provider. They also say if you have one of the cantaloupe brands at home to toss it in the garbage, wash your hands, and sanitize the surfaces the cantaloupe was on. Abby Francis, 1680 The Crow.
LNG workers were in Burnaby yesterday. With more, here's our reporter Kobe Smith.
Some LNG workers came to Burnaby to have an open house for the off-reserve Haisla members here in Vancouver. Crystal Smith, the elected chief councillor for Haisla, explains what the open house was for.
The purpose of the open house is essentially to make connections with our membership down here in Vancouver. We've held one in Kitimat, and it's essentially the educational piece, which we feel is important for our membership to understand what the project is, what to expect.
The project is currently at 85% overall complete as they keep track on the cargo ships coming into Kitimat. Kobe Smith, 1680 The Crow.
We are joined now live in studio by Kobe. Kobe, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Nathan.
So, which Indigenous community owns the LNG project?
It is Haisla Nation that owns the Cedar LNG project, and it is the first ever Indigenous owned in Canada.
And how long will it take to build?
Right now, they are in their phase 1 right now, and they're 85% done. And they're expected to be done by 2025. Back to you, Nathan.
Awesome. Thanks, Kobe. The Steveston Santa Claus Parade is coming back this Christmas Eve after 4 years. Our reporter Caitlin No has the story.
Alex Sadgert, one of the lead organizers of this year's parade, kept the tradition alive during the pandemic by driving his truck along the parade route with Santa decorations. This year, Sadgert and the Richmond Firefighters Charitable Society are bringing back the 45-year tradition at full capacity.
Just something free for the whole family can enjoy. There's no prerequisites or anything. We obviously encourage people, if they can, to donate non-perishable food or monetary money towards the food bank, but that's definitely not required. We just want everybody to come out and be a part of the fun.
The event will start at 6 p.m. and donations will be collected during the parade. Caitlin No, 1680 The Crow.
An accident just south of Whistler has left 2 adults and a child dead, along with a 4th person injured. The single vehicle crash Sunday happened on the Sea to Sky Highway. The car was heading northbound before veering off the road and crashing into a tree. The 2 adults and child were pronounced dead at the scene, and a woman was taken to hospital in stable condition. Inspector Robert Dykstra, the officer in charge of the Sea to Sky RCMP, called the accident an absolute tragedy. A full investigation is underway to determine the nature of the crash, but criminality is not expected at this time. A fog warning has been issued for the Lower Mainland. For almost the past week, it unusually shows up from time to time. Jerison Orshon explores the impact of the fog.
The current fog outside is visible since last night and should disappear by noon today. However, it will come back tonight and the process repeats again. While this type of fog happens occasionally in the Lower Mainland, it is unusual for it to happen almost every day. The fog can lead to poor visibility, requiring car headlights to be turned on while on the road. Flights arriving at YVR Airport can be delayed because it will be hard for pilots to land as well as safety reasons. Environment Canada defines fog as minute water droplets suspended in the air or near the surface of the earth. Jerison Rashon, 1680, The Crow.
A landslide along a section of the Stanley Park seawall has forced the area to close. The park board issued a statement via social media announcing that the stretch between 2nd and 3rd beaches will be inaccessible until December 1st. The landslide happened near Ferguson Point, and the remediation work will require heavier machinery to solve the issue. The beaches will remain open and will be accessible via parking lots. Park goers are being urged to follow the site signage and observe detours. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says the province will upload 2 Toronto highways in order to help alleviate the city's growing financial pressure.
The city will be able to spend billions more on affordable housing, fixing transit, and building communities with all the things we love in the neighborhoods, whether it's community centers, libraries, parks, and all those things where people gathered and where they feel they belong.
Ford says the province will give Toronto up to $1.2 billion over the next 3 years. On to some international news now. Israel and Hamas are extending their 4-day truce for another 2 days. There are no reports, however, of the two sides releasing hostages or prisoners. White House security advisor John Kirby says they won't know who's getting released until the last minute.
The lists are developed by Hamas, and then, of course, the Israelis develop their list of Palestinian prisoners that they're going to release. And we're not involved in the specific drafting of the lists and the determination on Hamas's side of who's going to come out on any given day.
While the news of the ceasefire extension is welcome news, Kirby admits it does provide Hamas an opportunity to regroup. Off to some sports now. The Los Angeles Chargers fell to the Baltimore Ravens yesterday by a score of 20-10. Ravens rookie wide receiver Zay Flowers scored 2 touchdowns. Here's the call on Flowers' second touchdown to seal the game.
Now he brings Flowers in motion to the left. He gives it to Flowers in the jet sweep. He cuts inside the numbers. He's in the 30, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Ravens! Zay is in the barn, and the Ravens knock out the Chargers in L.A.
The win moves the Ravens to the top of the AFC with a record of 9-3. The Chargers dropped to 4-7 on the season. The Carolina Panthers have made a coaching change this morning, firing head coach Frank Reich. Quarterbacks coach Josh McCown and assistant head coach / running backs coach Deuce Staley have also been let go. Special teams coordinator Chris Tabor will take over as the Panthers' interim head coach. The Panthers are struggling this year, having a league worst record of 1-10. Reich has been responsible for the Panthers' offense this year, which has ranks near the bottom of the league in almost every major offensive category. The Panthers would be in line for the number 1 pick this upcoming draft, but traded it to move up to number 1 last season to draft quarterback Bryce Young. Reich becomes the 3rd first-year head coach to be fired before the end of the season in the past 3 seasons, joining Urban Meyer in Jacksonville in 2021 and Nathaniel Hackett in Denver last year. Minnesota Vikings star wide receiver Justin Jefferson is set to miss tonight's game against the Chicago Bears. Jefferson has been out since Week 5 after he suffered a hamstring injury. Jefferson began practicing this week in hopes of playing, but ultimately decided it was best to sit out with the Vikings bye week coming up next week. The Vikings are 5-1 without Jefferson and currently sit in a wild cards position in the NFC. Kickoff for tonight's game is scheduled for 5:15 p.m. Off to some baseball news now. The St. Louis Cardinals are finalizing a 3-year, $75 million deal with pitcher Sonny Gray. Gray is 34 years old, coming off one of the best campaigns of his career this past season. Pitching for the Minnesota Twins, Gray finished runner-up in the American League Cy Young voting. Gray pitched 184 innings for the Twins, authoring a 2.79 earned run average with just 8 home runs given up. Gray is the 3rd starting pitcher the Cardinals have added this offseason, joining Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn. The Twins will receive a compensation draft pick from the Cardinals after Gray declined the team's qualifying offer earlier this offseason. The Los Angeles Dodgers have agreed to a one-year, $9 million deal with outfielder Jason Hayward, according to ESPN's Kylie McDaniel. The 34-year-old returns to the Dodgers after enjoying a resurgent season with the club in 2023. The outfielder registered an .813 OPS with 15 home runs and 40 RBIs across 124 games. Hayward was also one of the best defensive outfielders in the game last season, ranking in the 91st percentile in outs above average. Hayward struggled in the 2 seasons prior with the Chicago Cubs. Draymond Green spoke to the media for the first time following his 5-game suspension yesterday. Green was suspended after defending teammate Klay Thompson by putting Minnesota Timberwolves center Rudy Gobert in a chokehold. Green says he has no regrets about the act.
I don't live my life with regrets. Like I said before, I'll come to a teammate's defense anytime that I'm in a position to come to a teammate's defense.
The Warriors struggled without Green, going just 2-4 in the games he missed, including the game against the Timberwolves, where he was ejected not even 2 minutes into the game. Green is set to return to the Warriors lineup tomorrow night against the Sacramento Kings. Taking a look at the weather now, it remains 5 degrees and parts of fog still remain. It is mostly cleared up, but it is expected to return later tonight. We are expected to see a high of 7 degrees today, with a low of 1 coming later tonight. That does it for your 12 o'clock news update. I'm Nathan Maley. Thanks for listening.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikka-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikka-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hello everyone, this is 1680 The Crow. I'm Sean Park and this is your 1230 news update. Starting with police stories, the Prince George's RCMP is urging parents and caregivers to have an open and honest conversation with their youth about the dangers of sextortion. The Canadian Press reporter Beth Lathon has more information about the 12-year-old youth who took his own life after being a target of an online sextortion scheme.
Mounties say the unnamed youth was at home when he shot himself rather than endure the ongoing sextortion demands. Few details are available, but police say the death happened on October 12th. An RCMP statement urges parents to be honest with children about the dangers of online activity, especially with people they don't know. The statement reports 62 cases of online sextortion in Prince George alone this year, up from 56 last year. Beth Layton, The Canadian Press.
According to the Sea to Sky RCMP, 2 adults and a child have died after a fatal crash on Highway 99 Sunday morning. Police say the vehicle drove off the highway and hit a tree. RCMP says 1 woman has been taken to a hospital and is in stable condition. Mounties say they do not believe the collision is related to criminal activities. Police in Winnipeg say a 4th person died from yesterday's shooting in downtown Winnipeg. A 55-year-old man is still in critical condition at a hospital. Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smith says the investigation is still in early stages. Smith says no one has been arrested so far, and he understands the community's concerns.
This is an extremely troubling event, and it certainly has shocked the community. We also know that homicide investigations that have multiple victims cause great concern, and they cause fear in the community.
The police have identified those killed as Crystal Beardy, who was 34 years old, her sister Stephine Beardy, who was 33 years old, and Milek Leshikil, who was 29 years old, and Dylan Lavalley, who was 41 years old. Moving on to updates from the province, the British Columbian government is proposing a 2-acre parcel of government-owned property near transit to be redeveloped to provide more rental homes, child and healthcare services, and retail space. Megan Latty is the mayor of Port Moody. She says she welcomes the development application. While the city has not yet reviewed it, Latty says it is consistent with Port Moody's strategic plan to meet the province's housing targets. The province says that within the next 10 years, this project plans to deliver 10,000 homes in provincially owned lands near transit hubs as part of the province's Homes for People's Action Plan. The British Columbian government plans to open 46 new homes in Victoria for people experiencing homelessness. The province says it is called the Juniper, and those new homes will have around-the-clock support, a private washroom, a shower, and kitchenette with a full-size fridge. Among these new homes, 4 of the units are wheelchair accessible. The Portland Hotel Society manages the Juniper. They plan to provide residents with various support services, including employment assistance and counseling, physical and mental health resources, meals, and referrals to addiction treatment and recovery services. These new homes on Yates Streets are part of the province's $19 billion housing investment. The province plans to provide annual operating funding through BC Housing to continue building more homes throughout BC. The Carolina Panthers are saying goodbyes with their head new coach after less than 1 season. The Associated Press reporter Geth Kulbaugh has more information.
The Frank Reich era in Carolina is over after only 11 games. The Carolina Panthers fired their coach on Monday following the team's NFL worst 1-10 start. Panthers owner David Tepper announced the move hours after several news outlets reported that he used a profanity as he was leaving the locker room following a 17-10 loss to the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. Tepper hired Reich to fix one of the league's worst offenses over the past few seasons and develop number 1 overall draft pick quarterback Bryce Young. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
And that's it for the 12:30 news update. I'm Sean Park, and this is 1680.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Microlink, connecting you with your BCIT community. Hello everybody, my name is Tatiana Yakovleva and you're listening to the fall episode of Microlink. Microlink is a podcast brought to you by the BCIT Student Association. Personally, I think fall is an exciting time, and I'm actually excited to introduce a new voice to this podcast. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which BCIT's main campuses are located is the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the shared traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam First Nations. Today, we're joined by Sean Park, one of my coworkers, and Nick Dechev, a professor at University of Victoria. But being a professor is not the only thing Nick is occupied with. Today, we will be learning about what Victoria Hand Project is, how Nick's master's project helped found it, and where it is at today. In order to do it justice, I will let Sean take it away from here.
Hello everybody, I'm here with Nick Dechev. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Nick Dechev. I am the founder and currently Chief Technical Officer of Victoria Hand Project.
Seems like you have a lot of things going on. Let's start with your background in robotics. You teach at UVic, correct?
Yes. Now, I'm not currently teaching robotics. I do teach engineering design, and I teach a variation of that, which is, mechanics of machines, so that sort of thing. So it's very much close to robotics, and I have extensive robotics experience from my PhD. But yeah.
And speaking of, how has the robotics field changed and grown throughout your career in the field? And as a PhD professor, you're very knowledgeable in this field. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So just to clarify, the Victoria Hand, which we'll be talking about shortly, although it's based on mechanical principles, it's not technically robotic because the Victoria Hand doesn't use any electric components by design. However, I know quite a bit about robotic prosthesis. I've been following it for 27 years. My master's was in robotic prosthesis at University of Toronto. But we decided to take the Victoria Hand in a slightly different direction, which is just mechanical only.
Right.
But the field is advancing. The main advancements in robotic prosthetics are pretty much challenges on controlling them. That is to get the desires of the person wearing the prosthesis. How do you get someone's desire? What's in their head? Like, I want to do this. How do you get that into the machine? So that is some of the most challenging stuff, and that's where the most innovation has happened in the last 10 to 15 years. The machines themselves, however, there's some really cool ones out there, but they, actually haven't advanced that much. There's some refinements here and there, but I'd say the mechanical, electromechanical part of prosthesis has been the same for a while.
Right, and you briefly mentioned that robotics is not associated with Victoria's Hand project because it's mostly mechanical. So can you tell me more about the organization and what does mechanical really mean to an average person?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so okay, well, I'll tell you a bit about Victoria Hand in general, and then you might understand why we've chosen the mechanical only aspect. So when we started, Victoria Hand is in fact based on my master's work from 1998 to 2000 at the University of Toronto. And I worked inside a prosthetic clinic in a place called Sunnybrook Hospital, and got a lot of feedback about what prosthetics looks like, just coming up to the year 2000 and how it can be improved. And like probably hundreds of other students across the world, I decided to take a journey into prosthetic development. So I created this interesting mechanical hand, and it did finish my work. And then over the years, it after we published a paper on it, it generated a lot of interest on the mechanics of it, not the robotics, but the mechanics of it, how it worked. Roll forward 12 years later, it was about 2012, and like many projects done, they sit in shelves for years. And sometimes other technologies have to catch up to make an old project work well. I think we can see that with computing these days with a lot of new technology. So some students found the hand. They said, "Hey, Dr. Dechev, we'd like to 3D print this." And I said, "Oh, 3D printing that'll never work. It's not strong enough." And they said, no, it's really, really good. And I'm like, I don't believe it. And so they said, "Can we try?" I said, "Of course you can try." So they 3D printed a very crude version of the 1999 hand. They brought it to me, and we were playing around with it, and I was actually shocked to see how strong it was. I couldn't believe it. And this was on a cheap, $2,000 printer. And that's when kind of the beginnings of the Victoria hand were born. So we took an old design that was proven and published, and we converted it into a 3D printed design. And that took, almost a year and a half, because you can't just print exactly the same way it's made. We got some grant money, and we started the Victoria hand in Guatemala in 2014 as a research project. And it wasn't even called the Victoria hand back then. We just called it the 3D printed prosthesis. It had no name. And here's the moment where it got interesting. So it's a very lengthy process to write an application to do testing with people. There's a lot of human ethics involved, and you have to make sure that things work okay. And if anything goes wrong, what's your plan? So that's called, human research ethics. And we did that, and we ran the study with about 15 people in Guatemala. And at the end of the study, remember, this is our version 1.0 hand. At the end of the study, people were like, can we please keep this? And we were shocked because we didn't expect it to survive or to do well.
Right.
And we're like, oh, that's not in the plan. I mean, the plan is you try it, and then
yeah, it's a prototype.
Yeah, it was just a prototype, right? Replicated 15 times, for these different people. And so we said, okay, well, hold on, we're going to make some improvements from the feedback, and then we'll come back and we'll give you an updated version based on all the feedback, because things didn't go perfectly. Sometimes we had a broken finger here and there, and so forth. And so we ended up fitting these people again, and at that point, there was a lot of discussion in the room, like, hey, is this just research, or are we're fitting people and they're taking these home and they're using them? That's not research. It's foreign aid. So
it's doing it.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, we talked with the University of Victoria, and we said what we're doing, and we all agreed that it would be best to spin out this research project into a not-for-profit, which we did. And that was in 2015, and that's when Victoria Hand was born. That's when we had to name it something. And when we had to name the organization, we called it Victoria Hand Project, because we're engineers and we can't come up with anything more interesting.
It's straightforward and does the job.
That's right. So that's where Victoria Hand is from. And just to get back to your question on robotics, I think you can see through that story that because it's majority of it is 3D printed, it lends itself to be more mechanical than electronic. And when we were working in Guatemala, I, to this day, remember being in, it was very kind for some of the amputees to invite us to their homes, because usually they come to the hospital, right? And they invited us, to go and visit them. And they didn't have running water, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have anything. They're just living in, one lady and her 2 kids were living in a kind of a brick building, earth floor, 3 walls and an outdoor stove. So, the idea of electricity, or, even charging batteries and she liked to wash clothes. And so the prosthesis is perfect because it's waterproof, because we made it with 3D printed material and metal. And so we realized that in developing countries, sometimes, the latest tech, the infrastructure isn't there, and it's not what people need. And so from there on, Victoria Hand continued to be mechanical only, and I'll tell you more about it later.
Well, that's very interesting. And what other side work have you done besides Guatemala?
Well, when we were working in Guatemala, one of my students, and when I say students, these are typically 3rd year or 4th year engineers and mechanical engineers, and biomedical engineers, and they all came to volunteer their time. So they're some of the top students. They were really excited about the project. So 2 of them, Pranay and Pranav, were from Nepal, and they were working on the project for quite some time. And one day, Pranay came up to me and he said, listen, Dr. Gachev, I'm Nepalese. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I don't ask people their heritage because it doesn't matter to me. I mean, you know, you're either good at what you do, and that's the bottom line, right? And so he said there's a great need in Nepal, and he said, you know, my father works at an orthopedic hospital in Nepal and in Kathmandu, and can we bring the Victoria Hand Project there? And I said, oh, I'm, you know, not sure. And we applied for some more grant money and we got it. And then we expanded to Nepal. And from Nepal, we also expanded into Cambodia. And then, you know, people just through networking alone, about a year later, we got connected with Enable Community Foundation in the US, and they had heard about our hands and they had money. And together we expanded into Haiti. And then we went into Ecuador. And when I say expand, it wasn't like a one-shot thing. Like we actually would fundraise, we would get 3D printers, we would do a trip, we would train them, and we'd partner with professional prosthetists. So suddenly within a few years, we were in 5 countries, and word of mouth just kind of kept spreading. We got more grants. We got a Google grant in 2017, which really helped elevate the work into Egypt and into Uganda. And then we had an opportunity to expand into Kenya, which we did. I'm forgetting a country. I know I am. So we just kept growing. I mean, right now we have 9 countries that are very stable that we work in. We have each country has like at least 3 or 4 printers. They have trained staff. We have a constant flow of materials going to each country, and they fit people. Every amputee has very unique needs. It's not a matter of just having a missing limb. And just to be clear, Victoria Hand only does upper limb. There's when someone says the word amputee, it's well known that about 9 out of 10 amputees, that means people who have a limb loss, have a lower limb loss. 90% of amputees are lower limb patients. So only 10 or 15% are upper limb. So we only work with upper limb people, and there's several reasons for that. But what that has allowed us to do is to become experts, really, really good at doing just that. And upper limb loss is quite complex as well. There's if you have an upper limb loss at your wrist or at your forearm or higher on your forearm or past your elbow, there's different ways you have to treat that with prosthesis. And so that's all we do. Yeah. Because upper limb loss is so unique, and without getting into too many details, there was one boy in Kenya, that Michael Perrone, who's currently CEO of Victoria Hand. We were just perplexed. We're like, how are we going to fit this child with a prosthesis? Because he had double limb loss and also leg loss. He'd been in an accident, and the anatomy of his limbs was really challenging to fit. But we're engineers, and it took a bit of time, so we couldn't fit him right away. But we developed it, and because we established those partnerships on the ground in the country. Once we tried something here, we tested it, we made sure it worked. Then we sent them the digital files, and we walked them through fitting him, and they eventually fit him. And then we learned from that. So now when people have that same type of limb disfigurement, we can fit them too. And we just recently fit a fellow in Ukraine, in Vinnytsia, who had the same, this man is much older, but it was the same type of limb issue. And we're like, oh, we've done this before. Let's train our partners on how to do this. And we did. And he was fit in a matter of a week. So yes, we have special cases, we learn, and we keep adding to our digital collection of ways to fit people. Yeah.
Embrace the magic of winter at BCIT Student Association's 2nd annual Winterfest. Over 20 vendors to suit your holiday needs with student-friendly pricing. Join us Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Be a part of the action in the Great Hall. Don't miss it. Brought to you by the City of Burnaby and the BCIT Student Association. Visit bcitsa.ca for more details.
And speaking of Ukraine, I know that you provided some aid and leave. Can you tell us more about that? I know it's a little different expanding into a country that is in an active war. How did that change your process?
Well, first of all, it was a very big decision to do that. We've never worked in a country prior to that was in a state of war. That's not who we are. We're engineers. We're not doctors. This is not something like MSF. We had a long discussion about whether it was okay for us to do that. I think with Ukraine, we ultimately decided that because it is such a vast country, it is a huge country, that if we were on one side of it, far away from the active areas of conflict, the risk would be lower. Obviously, there's missiles and bombs dropping everywhere, but we saw the huge need, and we were asked a number of times by people. We never push our way into places. Like, we just get requests, and after several requests, we ended up networking and making a partnership. We only do our partnerships through networking, and we found 2 suitable partners. And I did a exploratory trip in February this past year to meet them. And I felt that they would be great partners. It was relatively safe. And then we went back in June, and we actually outfitted both clinics with a whole bunch of printers, and so it's working now. It's getting supplies in is very long and slow, very long. But that's is what it is. So.
Is there any country that you're foreseeing a future expansion, or is it just whatever that comes through networking and connections that you can establish along the way?
It's all through networking. So people in the prosthetics community in Canada and the US, but especially the US as well, know who we are. We're friends with many of the top prosthetists. And, we were just down in the American Prosthetics Conference in Indianapolis in September, and we were there for about 5 days, and just met with some of the leaders and prosthesis. We're chatting, and people know what we do. We also did a presentation there, and I think networking is the best way, because it's all about human interaction and connections, and so I think that's a very organic process. I forgot to mention a country. We were actually in Pakistan. We established a clinic. They built a brand new hospital there in, I think it's Karachi. And Michael and Kim, 2 of our team members, went over there in May. I guess 2 months before we went to Ukraine, and they established a full system over there. So they have it's a full, usually we get a room or 2 different rooms, and it's full of equipment in terms of 3D printing, assembly, computers, everything to do the Victoria hand on site. So yeah, we're also in Pakistan. But you're asking about future plans? Not really. Anywhere we expand, we have to fundraise, because it's just, each country is so unique. We like to keep it the same, but each country is really unique with its own challenges. So, yeah.
Right. And speaking of fundraising, is the project currently sustainable? Is there an established grant of revenue that comes in, or is this something that has to be a challenge every step of the way?
No, there's no steady, I wish there was, but there's no steady income. What I will say is that there's a lot of interest. When we fundraised for Ukraine, we had a very specific campaign that we did on social media, and there was an incredible amount of support. So we met our goal, and we're very proud to say that all those funds went exactly where we said they would go, because that's what we do. I don't get a dollar out of Victoria Hand, not a single, never in my life, all these years, because I'm paid by the University of Victoria. In fact, every year I probably lose a few $1,000 because I don't bother to expense things. It's too much hassle. So I buy and I give and I give my time so yeah, no, it will continue to be usually on a project-to-project basis. That's how we fundraise. But because Victoria Hand goes and establishes in those countries, you're asking me about sustainability. It is sustainable. The doctors in Ukraine, or the prosthetists, or the doctors in Pakistan, they're funded by their hospital, right? They're employees of that's why we only partner with hospitals or clinics, because they're already there. They're already being paid. And so really, when you think about it, our model is all we're doing is supplying the designs, the ideas, and then to start them up, we supply the printers, but then the printers are there, they're working. And because there's 4 of them or 5 printers, they last, if one goes down, it doesn't matter. There's another 3 running, right? So, and they're very easy to service. Everything has been designed from 2014, 2015, from the beginning with sustainability. What happens if the power goes? What if this component breaks? What if this piece of the prosthesis breaks? Well, the person visits the clinic, which is only maybe an hour away, and they print a new piece and they put it in and it's done. It works. It's about making the prosthesis on site in the country, because then it's easy for everyone. The amputees, it's low cost. 3D printing a little latch maybe on the wrist, it's like 10 cents. It's a completely different model. Is you build on site. It's kind of like IKEA, except except the parts come out of a printer, if that makes sense.
That does, and I know that model specifically works for developing countries or countries that have potential to not have as many resources, like what you've mentioned about lights going out. How does this issue of amputees not having prosthetics translate to Canada? Is this something that Canadians face as well, or is it like a different issue? Or is it the same issue, but is it presented in a different manner?
It's different. Canada is a very interesting system in terms of prosthetic and orthotic care. In Canada, for instance, the policies to help an amputee vary on a provincial basis. So if you are in Prince Edward Island, there is no prosthetic coverage, period. That's it. In British Columbia, you are allowed to receive 1 prosthesis to satisfy the minimum need, and that's a very important proviso. I'll talk about that in a second. Every 3 years. I'm giving you the simplified version. There's a bit more detail, like you can read the policies. It's actually every 3 to 5 years, and there's some, a bit of leeway. You actually make an application. So if you're an amputee in BC or Alberta or Ontario, you meet with a prosthetist, you talk, you fill out an application. It goes to something called PharmaCare here, and a review board reads it, and then they decide if they'll fit the person based on if it's been 3 years or so, and then what type of device they'll fit. And that's where the minimum need comes in. So you do not get the state-of-the-art, $50,000 prosthesis here. That will not be funded in British Columbia. What you get is usually a hook, or you get a nice myoelectric arm, but it's the low grade. It's like a $12,000, $15,000 arm. And they're quite nice, actually. I don't mean to demean it by saying it's low grade. In fact, I want to take that back. It's the minimum device that meets the need, but it's not as advanced as some of the stuff you see on Discovery Channel or anything like that. Not like that.
Of course, and we're talking about devices that meet minimum needs for physical needs in order to have a person function in the best and in the most able way possible. But is there still some stigma and negative interpretation that is associated with prosthetics and amputees in general?
In Canada, in the US, in Europe, I would say no. I think that what we have done as a society in these countries, the ones I've just named, is from childhood age, we've explained that people have differences. And so, you'll teach children to say that people have limb differences, right? there's all sorts of acceptance. And so what happens is people are who they are, and it's not a problem. And that has been a concerted effort over, a generation or two to do that. And I think we've achieved that, because I certainly see amputees all the time in Canada, and they're like, yeah, I got no arm. And it's not a big deal. They can have a job, they can have employment. Nobody, people aren't pointing at them. In Guatemala or Nepal, it's completely different. Completely. It's a shame. In Haiti, there's the stories that we got. One of them was so crazy that we actually had to verify it. We heard the story and we thought, let's just verify it, because this sounds so crazy. But we found the source and we talked to them. And so basically in Haiti, for instance, the bus drivers won't stop, or taxis won't stop. They see you have a missing limb because it's bad. It's a belief system. It's like the person's cursed. They don't want them in the vehicle. You don't get jobs. In Guatemala, I remember the boy I spoke with and his father. We gave him a prosthesis, and the man said, listen, thanks for the prosthesis. It'll help my son. I appreciate it. He goes, but what my son really needs is a job. He's lucky, he gets straight A's in school, but the best job he can get is he picks watermelons in the fields. I have so many stories. I don't want to waste your time, but I remember this one in particular. And I remember every person I've ever met, actually, vividly. And so he said, he picks watermelons. That's the best job he can get. And the end of the season, as they're starting to get less and less need for pickers, they fire him first because he's the amputee. It's very different way of thinking throughout the world. And maybe we could look at that here in the West, and we can be judgmental about that and say, oh, that's terrible. But you can look at the other way around. People need to survive in these low-income countries. And so I don't think it's right that he's let go first, but they need to be efficient and make money and survive and feed their families. And so it's very difficult for amputees in other countries, very difficult. So, if our prosthesis in any way can help them get employment, that's like our top criteria. Anything. In Nepal, the ladies that we fit, if the prosthesis is black, they will not touch it. They will not wear it. Black means death. It has to be painted, and they cover themselves and they cover their hands, and sometimes they put little strings and braid it, and they'll wear little gloves on their prosthesis, and then you can't tell that it's not an artificial hand anymore. So they have the body image. They feel whole because they have two arms and hands, and they can they're able to carry a bag or to carry a purse or whatever, and they feel whole, but they don't want anyone to know that they're an amputee. I could talk for hours on it. I won't. I think you get the idea.
But I still really appreciate your time, and thank you for what you do. It helps physically and also helps out mentally as well. I think it does help bridge that gap. Unfortunately, there's probably a long way to go, but it definitely helps. Is there anything that you would like to highlight, any people that you work with, or promote Victoria's Hand Project before we go?
Yes, absolutely. So to be very clear, the Victoria Hand Project is a team. It has always been a whole team of people. I want to highlight, Michael Perrone, who has been with Victoria Hand since 2015. He started as a co-op student, and then he graduated and, became just an engineer, and then became the chief operating officer. And finally, I promoted him and changed my role, and he became the CEO. There's Kelly Knights, and she's currently the chief operating officer, and she was with us since 2017. And then there's Kim Arkell, and Kelly is an engineer as well. And then there's Kim, who's our mechanical systems lead. She's been with us since 2019 or 2020. We have Michelle, and then we have dozens of people who've worked with us over the years as engineers who've gone on to other careers, and we still keep in touch with all of them. I would say there's probably 30 engineers that have helped contribute to the Victoria Hand. That's some of the brightest people I know. And all that info is on our website. We have a list of previous members, and so people can go and check out who has helped. And every year we accept 6 co-op. It's called co-op students. They're like a 4-month work term where they work full time for 4 months. We have 6 per year that work with us. So we're always, bringing in new people, volunteers, and so I want to acknowledge all of these people because without them, Victoria Hand wouldn't exist. There's just too much work, and their dedication and their time makes it all possible.
We'll put the link to your website in the description, but thanks again for your time.
That was Sean Park interviewing Nick Detchev about the Victoria Hand Project. Thank you so much for joining us today for Microlink. What did you think of this episode? Please don't hesitate to reach out to give your feedback. For more information about what Link and BCIT Student Association does, please visit linkbcit.ca. That is linkbcit.ca. You will be able to find our contact information on the website. And if you get bored, the website also has plenty of articles and podcast episodes to occupy your time. But that is going to be it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Teresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.